First element in the recording chain is the microphone. And as you can see here, I'm surrounded by a forest of different types of microphones, condensers here, and dynamics over here. They work differently and so are going to be good for different situations. With dynamic mics, a coil of wire is attached to the rear of the diaphragm and suspended in a magnetic field. When a sound causes the diaphragm to move, so does the coil, and this creates the electrical signal. Dynamic mics are rugged and relatively inexpensive, and they don't distort very easily, which makes them the ideal choice for bass drums and loud guitar amps. The condenser microphone uses two electrically charged plates, one of which is the diaphragm. When the diaphragm moves in response to a sound, the distance between the plates varies, resulting in an electrical signal. Condenser mics need a power supply to charge the plates and to boost the very low electrical signal. Most contemporary consoles have a built-in 48-volt DC phantom power supply, although some condenser mics will allow you to use batteries. Condenser mics are more sensitive than dynamics and will distort if presented with very high volumes. This sensitivity gives them better high frequency and transient response than dynamics, which is important for recording instruments like acoustic guitars, pianos, strings, or cymbals. Here we have a wide variety of dynamic microphones, starting with this Beta 57 by Shure, a Shure SM7, Sennheiser 441, the famous 57 Shure microphone, which is the standard workhorse of the industry, and the Sennheiser 421, great tom-tom mic, and this is the Shure Beta 58. Down here we have a very unique dynamic microphone. Looks like a bit of a spaceship from the 50s. This is the new D112 by AKG. I use this on bass drum an awful lot. Very good, very tough mic and virtually indestructible, and you can't destroy it. I'd like to talk about condenser microphones. The two that are standing right here in front of me, this is the TLM-170 by Neumann, a really expensive, beautiful microphone, great for vocals, sax, strings, very expensive, mostly used in professional studios. An AKG C3000 condenser, a beautiful mic, great for strings and horns, vocals, and a very well-known microphone, the AKG CK414. Great vocal mic, great acoustic guitar mic with a pop shield. This is a Neumann SM69. It's a rather phallic-looking object, but it has a revolving capsule. There are two microphones in here, and it's used in stereophonic recording. It has MS and XY. I'll explain that later. This is the famous Neumann U87, a ubiquitous mic. I use this all the time in the studio. It's probably one of the most used condensers in the studio. I use it on drums, I use it on vocals, room mics, more about that later. Over here we have a relatively inexpensive AKG condenser microphone. It's called the CK91. We'll be using this later in our program, recording acoustic guitar. Very bright mic, very good mic, a lot of presence, and certainly quite affordable for a project studio. Same here with this Sennheiser. This is the MKH40. It's a relatively inexpensive condenser microphone. Very good for a project studio. I want to talk to you about esoteric microphones like this thing here in my hand. It's one of these make my day type mics. Good for pointing way out in the distance and picking up people's conversation, if you know what I mean. And over here, we have a PZM microphone made by Neumann. Pressure zone microphone. I use it sometimes in the studio, sticking it to the inside lid of a piano. Gives you a nice big overall sound. It's omnidirectional, which means picking up from everywhere. I also sometimes do it by sticking it on the glass of the control room window so I can pick up the whole band. Kind of a neat trick. I'd like to talk about another kind of esoteric microphone. It's called the ribbon microphone. Not really room for it here in the project studio because they're very delicate mics, like the M160 Bayer or the RCA 77DX that you see on the David Letterman show every night. It's a very delicate microphone. If you put it in front of a bass amp or a bass drum, you'll blow the ribbon and it's terribly expensive to replace, mostly for professionals. I use them in the studio an awful lot. Another type of esoteric microphone that I use is called the tube condenser. Extremely expensive. I'm going to use it at Fantasy Studios when we record the drums live, and you'll see that in action. Besides microphones, there's yet another way that you can pick up sound. As in this acoustic guitar over here, it has a pickup built in underneath the bridge. And with a little preamplifier, we can run out of here through this wire into a DI box. Now, in this bass guitar, we have high impedance pickups. Same thing as in that guitar. And virtually any electric guitar has high impedance pickups. And you want to convert that high impedance to low impedance so that it will match into your console. And we come out of this bass guitar through a wire into this DI box right here where it says instrument. The other half goes into your amplifier where it says amplifier. On the back of it, where it says mic output, it feeds into the console. Now, the reason for this is that sometimes you want to get a very direct present sound on a bass or an acoustic guitar and mix it in with other microphones. Sometimes it's useful if you're in your little project studio and you can't turn up the amp, you can run the bass DI straight into the console with a little bit of compression. Makes a great sound. Now that we've dealt with DI, let's see what we can do with an amplifier. We have our ubiquitous clothes closet, which becomes a great isolation booth. And in it, we have a small amplifier with two dynamic microphones, very reasonably priced. A Shure SM57 and a Sennheiser 421. Close mic'd. Reason being, each microphone has a totally different sound, and if you place the microphones carefully, one in the center of the speaker and one slightly off the center of the speaker, you're going to get a great guitar sound at your console without too much EQ. Richard, who plays with Chaka Khan and with Etta James, a magnificent sax man. He's going to play some sounds for us, and we're going to get some cool sounds at the console. The trick here is to get a great sax sound with either an inexpensive microphone or a very expensive microphone, or, if you're really smart, combination of two mics. The answer to getting a good sound is in the positioning of the microphone. Now, Richard, could you just play me a few more bars and we'll demonstrate the difference between the 57, its sound is like this. And the same thing again, please, Richard. What you can hear immediately is there is a big difference in the quality of the tone. The 87, of course, being a fairly expensive condenser mic, is capturing the whole frequency range from the very, very top to the very, very bottom. The 57, although a decent microphone, doesn't have that kind of frequency response, and it sounds pinched, and it sounds just a little too skinny. So what I do is I use the characteristics of the 57, which is a kind of a skinny sounding mic, and the full and fatness of the 87, combine the two of them together, and what we get is this. Okay, Richard. Thank you, Richard. If you're recording a live instrument in your project studio, like Richard here with the sax, and you have your monitors cranked up, you're going to completely change your sound. Now, that may be something that's desirable, but some people like it, some people don't. So the alternative is put the headphones on, turn the monitor speakers down so you won't get any feedback. Okay, Richard, let's try it again. I'd like to talk about microphone patterns. This 87, very expensive condenser mic, has three positions: cardioid, figure of eight, and omnidirectional. Now, Richard's going to play, and I'm going to position the microphone on the soprano, and he's going to walk around to the back of the microphone so you can get an idea of what cardioid really means. Cardio means live in the front and dead in the back. Thank you, Richard. We're going to switch this now to figure of 8. Now, what that means is literally this microphone is live in a figure of 8 shape like this. The sides will be dead, back and front will be live. And Richard's going to walk around and we'll hear what happens. Now, I hope we all got the feeling that when he went to the sides, it was dead, and when it went to the front and back, we heard him. Very useful for you putting two horn players, a sax player playing tenor and another player playing soprano, like Richard does. Now, make sure that your fader's down so you don't get your bang on your monitor, and we're going to switch this to Omni. Like that. We're going to put the microphone like so, and Richard's going to do another dance around the mic, and it should be exactly the same wherever he goes. You know that is exactly the same all the way around. That's Omni. That means it's alive all the way around. As you can see, what we've been doing with Richard on this beautiful condenser microphone, getting these great sounds, you're going to need something of decent quality. You maybe don't have to go quite to this extent. You can do it with dynamics and get a good selection, because they're all going to sound different, whether it's an MD421 or whether it's a Shure. You can use those microphones. You can use them on amps. You can use them on bass drums. You can use them on snares. You may have to work a little harder to get a great sound, but dynamic microphones are the basis of your project studio. Now, Richard, play us out, please.
Yes.
The console is the centerpiece of your project studio, and we have a huge variety of boards, consoles, desks. And we use the word desk in England because it looks like a desk. But here in America, we call them boards. So on my left, we have a Tascam Portastudio with a cassette machine in it, built-in recorder. We'll talk more about that later. A little Mackie 12-in, 2-out console. A Yamaha multi-track cassette recorder. Another Mackie board, 16-in, 2-out, and a Tascam 8-output, 24-input console. We have a Mackie 24-input console, 8-bus out. It's a very compact board. They crammed an awful lot of stuff into a very small space. It's an amazing board. And it's quite unlike the consoles that I normally use, which are usually about 6 or 7 feet long. But basically, every strip is the same on this console. If you learn one, you've got them all. And I'm going to try and show you the function of an entire strip, all the way down from the mic line position to the mic trims, to the auxiliaries, the EQ section, the pan controls, the level controls, and the faders, and the bus assignments. Basically a very simple concept. First, there is the input section that will accept both microphones and line level devices. This switch indicates whether it is mic or line. In this case, we want it in the mic position. The signal then goes to a mic preamp, which increases the low voltage of the mic to a voltage which is high enough to be used by the console. Now, to set our input level, first we want to put the fader at unity gain or 0, which is where the fader is most efficient. Now we turn up the gain until we are getting a healthy signal level, which would be around 0 on the meters. On channel 15, in the line position, as you can see is different from the mic position on 16, the button is pushed down in line. I have an organ plugged into this channel. This control now becomes a line trim. Again, set the level by putting the fader at the unity position and adjust the trim to get a good signal level. Next, the